Welcome inside the coach's room. How about that new music? Anthony Cortez. Huge thanks to Anthony Cortez coming up with the new music inside the coach's room. Thanks, Anthony, for a little bit of help. I'm Petey. Thanks for coming inside the coach's room today. Former video coach in the National Hockey League, trying to pass on a little bit of what I know from inside the room and try to share it with you. Today's a little different. The last couple episodes, we have talked to a few coaches from around the NHL. And today we're going to do something different. Today we're going to talk about the Utah Hockey Club. We used to talk about Utah a lot on this show, but we thought at the break, getting ready for the Four Nations tournament, that would be a great time to take a look back at what's happened to Utah so far this season. So today, inside the coach's room, we're going inside the Utah Hockey Club room. Now, they're 6 points out of the playoffs, 56 games in. And you go, okay, 6 points out. They can make that up. 6 points. It's 6 points. It's 3 games. It's a lot harder than that. When you start doing the math, they got 26 games left. And you're thinking the playoffs probably going to be around 93 to get in. For Utah to go 93 points, they're going to need to get 18 wins out of 26 games remaining. 18-8. Yeah, okay, they can get some overtime wins. So what do you go, 15-5-6? I mean, it's going to be incredibly hard for the Utah Hockey Club to get to 93. But when you look at Vancouver, who currently holds that last spot in the wild card in the Western Conference, they have 27 games left, and they only need 30 points. So you're talking 15-12, and they're in. And that's how I know it looks like 6 points, but it's so hard to make up those points this time of the year. And that's why it's so important when you play those teams head-to-head. And they play Vancouver twice, and they've got Calgary once, another team they need to jump over just to get the chance to compete with Vancouver. Those are games they have to win. Those are 4-point games, and they have to win those for the Utah Hockey Club. So today, what I thought I would do is I'd take a look at the statistics and where this team is at this point in the season. And this team is a rebuild. We've talked about the Utah Hockey Club being a rebuild from the Arizona days, and it's been in a rebuild mode in Arizona for quite some time. So it's rebuild on track. So let's look at some of the numbers today. Let's look at individual players' numbers. Let's look at team numbers. Let's see if this team is on the right trajectory to eventually get to be a playoff team on a continual basis. And that's what General Manager Bill Armstrong wanted to do. It's not just get in once and compete. It's get in every year. And that's what he said. He wants a continual playoff performing team. So are they on the right path? And so today what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of those numbers and just see where they're at the break. Are they in a good spot for what they're trying to accomplish here in the rebuild? And are they making progress from what they've done in Arizona? And I think the best place to start is let's look at the numbers from last year, 56 games in, the last season in Arizona. And then let's go and look at where they're at 56 games in Utah. So let's go to the numbers. And you can see at the break in 24-25, after 56 games, this season, Utah has 24 wins. Last year in Arizona, they had 23. But the big difference right now is they've got 57 points versus 50 points their final season in Arizona. So they are progressing. They are going the right direction. They are getting more points. And at 56 games, having 7 points ahead, that means you're going to finish somewhere 12, 14 points ahead of where you are by the end of the season. Let's look at some more numbers as we get deeper into what Utah has done so far this season. And one of the things they've done is they've been really good on the road. You look at the road record this season for the Utah Hockey Club, they're 15-11-3 for 33 points. The last season in Arizona, at this point in the season, they were 8-15-4, only 8 wins on the road, 7 games under 500, and only 22 points. 11 points they've made up on the road. This team is very good on the road. They've done exceptional outside of Delta Center, but that's one of the problems. Because one of the problems this team has is at home in Utah at the Delta Center. This year, this team has 9 wins, 12 losses, 6 OT losses for a total of 24 points at home. Now, you go at last year's Arizona Coyote team, their last year at Mullet, the Mullet Magic existed. They were good at home. They played different at home. They played faster at home. This team is 15-14 with no overtime losses at home for a total of 30 points. And their home record was very good in Mullet Arena. And so you wonder what that shift has done, not just leaving Arizona, but the shift to the Delta Center. And they're trying to get used to their new surroundings and their new building. And let's face it, they had a real advantage in Mullet. We talked about it being under NHL standards, and it wasn't up to what was accepted in the National Hockey League. And the reality is, that's part of the reason they did so well there. Teams came in there and they just didn't know how to play. It was like a scrimmage game or a preseason game for teams as they came in. And I think that's one of the reasons they did so well at home. But if this team's going to be a perennial playoff team, they need to own their home ice. You have to be very good at home to be good in the playoffs, because you're looking for that home ice advantage. You want to finish higher in the standings. And when you get a team coming into your building, you want to take advantage of that, and you want to be good at home. So this team is going to have to find a way to be better at the Delta Center. And I'm not sure what that is. And there's so many things you have to look at when you're talking about your home record. And I can, again, only speak to what I knew from inside the coach's room here in Arizona. And so things you looked at when you're talking about a home record, you're talking about morning skates. Do you skate the guys in the morning? Do you not skate the guys in the morning? Do you skate them at the Oval? Do you skate them at the Delta Center? It matters because it affects when the players can get their rest. Can they get their nap time? And I know it sounds crazy, nap time, but guess what? They're all napping. Every player, every team, they're getting some quiet time in a hotel room or at home. So morning skates, are they important? Do they need to go? And it's something you need to look at when your home record is under 500. You have to see how you're preparing for your pregame meals. You have to see how you're preparing for your pregame videos. You have to see how you're preparing in the gym. All of those little details, they may or may not affect how the team is performing at home. They're little things that you have to at least investigate from the coaching staff side and see if any of these things can have an effect in the record at home. Now, one of the things that Utah is facing at their home record is something that Arizona faced a lot as well. And that's they would play out east, to play in a long Eastern road trip, and they have to play right away with one day off in between games and play at home. And that is so hard to do. It's so hard for players to transfer across the country against time zones and try to wake up on a different time zone. Now you're on the West Coast, your body clock's all screwed up, and you've just got done playing games, and you're tired, and now you got to play at home. And it was always a disadvantage. And go look at how many times the LA Kings get 2 days. And the Colorado Avalanche and those teams get, honestly, I can only speak to what I saw. We did a study on it, and Arizona was always one of the teams that had the most difficult time playing home games right after coming in off of the East Coast. So that may have something to do with it, but they are going to need to improve their home record if they're going to be a perennial playoff team. So let's look at some of the other numbers. How are they doing statistically versus what this team did in Arizona a year ago? And let's look at the playoff standings. When you go where they're at right now, after 56 games played, the Utah Hockey Club is currently 10th in the Western Conference. Last year, after 56 games, the Arizona Coyotes were in 13th. So clearly they're jumping higher in the standings. You go where they are in the playoff positioning, they're in the 4th wildcard spot in the Western Conference. They're 2 spots away from being that 2nd wildcard and inside the playoffs. A year ago, they were in the 7th wildcard spot. So clearly they're going up. And how many points out of the playoffs were they at 56 games a year ago? They were 12 points out of a playoff spot. When we talked about it this year, they're only 6 points out. So you talk about, is this team getting better? You talk about the steps. Are they getting better? The answer is yes. And you're just looking at how close they're getting to that double playoff line and how this team is getting better year after year. So there's some optimism in Utah. And let's look at some more numbers. Let's look at some statistics as a team. How is this team doing statistically against the rest of the league? And there's some big numbers you want to look at. And one of those is goals for. And this one was interesting to me. So you get to goals for per game. This year in Utah, this team is 2.8 goals per game through 56 games. Last year in Arizona, they were 2.9. So virtually the same. Just under 3 goals for both last season and this season in Utah. And their goal for rank this year in the league is 22nd out of 32. Last year, they were 26th out of 32. Again, very similar in goals for. But what's improved is their defending. And their goals against per game this season is an even 3.0. Last year was 3.3. That's a third of a goal every game, and that makes a difference. Right now, their goals against rank, they're 17th versus 22nd a year ago. And that makes a difference. And you talked about how Bill Armstrong wanted to get better defensively, how he wanted to improve defensively with players like Durzi and Marino and Sergachev. And now they've added Cole, and they've just done so much to improve their back end, but they've been hurt. They just can't get all of those guys in the lineup at one time. You know, John Marino's found himself back in the lineup, and hopefully Sean Durzi is back in before too long. But I think this team can even get better defending. I think Michael Kesselring has taken a huge step this season, both offensively and defensively, and I think that's really helped. But I think this team defends better as a team than they did a season ago because of the experience they're getting. The younger guys are getting more experience, and pulling a player like Mikhael Sergachev in from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who has won, who knows how to lead a group of people, that makes a big difference in Utah. And I think it's really starting to show that you get those kind of players in the locker room, that's part of the reason that they can defend so well. Now let's go to the next team stat, and that's special teams. So when you look at the special teams from this season, this team is 22.4% on the power play, which puts them in 14th in the National Hockey League. Last season, they were 21.7% and 16th in the NHL in the power play. So they're right around the midpoint last year, and they're right around the midpoint this season. Out of 32 teams, they're right in the middle of the pack. And you want to see this team progressing, especially with the addition of Guenther and Cooley on the power play, and Keller another season on the power play, and the addition of Sergachev on the power play. He's been a real effective quarterback at the top. And then you were hoping to have Sean Durzi on your second group. So you were hoping to be better on the power play. The second group probably has not performed what they had anticipated. And I think that's why you haven't seen this team jump higher in the power play rankings in the National Hockey League, is some of the performance on that second unit. And I think, again, we have to go back to injuries. And then we look at the penalty kill. This season's at 81.2%. It is ninth. It is top 10 penalty kill in the National Hockey League. Top 10. Last year, it was 78.7 in Arizona and ranked 20th, the bottom 2/3 of the league. And so you talk about differences. In special teams, it's kind of like we saw at the 5-on-5. We talked about goals for and goals against. This team seems to be defending better. And you talked about bringing Stenlund in on the back end on the penalty kill. Kerfoot still kills penalties. You've got Sergachev killing penalties. Ian Cole blocking shots on the penalty kill. This team has improved penalty killing, and that's been a big step. So you look at, they've defended better and allowed fewer goals against per game, and they're killing penalties much better. Again, it's got to find that offense. Not just 5-on-5, but on the power play. So it's something that needs to continue to grow, and I think you will see it continue to grow as players like Guenther and Cooley continue to get experience. So let's keep going down the stats. Let's see what we got. The other shots, we want to look at shots for and against. Again, another demarker of what a team provides offensively. And this season, they're getting 28.1 shots for per game. Last year, 26.7. So a shot and a half more. Not significant, but it's better. Shot rank last year, 30th. This team was 30th in shots for it. 56 game mark. Right now, they're 18th, just about the midpoint. So much better in what they have been able to do as far as getting shots on the net this season versus last. But again, it's the defensive side. So the shots against this season is 28.5 shots against average per game. 28.5. Last season, it was 32.1. So just under 4 shots better per game. And if you're giving up a shot every 10 shots on goal, you're giving up a goal. You give 4 less. That's where the 0.3 goals against comes from, because you're defending better. You're not defending as much. You're getting in shooting lanes. You have better sticks. You're better in your defensive zone. You're allowing less shots, and therefore less scoring opportunities. They're 14th in shots against right now in the National Hockey League, above the midpoint last year, 25. So you start to look at the team stats, and again, we talked about, is this team improving? The answer is yes. This team is getting better. This team is improving. Now, is it fast enough? I don't know if I'm the one to decide that. I think that's for Bill Armstrong and his staff to decide if this team is growing at a fast enough pace, and if they are improving fast enough, and if they are getting better on the pace that they want to be in this rebuild. But they are getting better, and it's significantly better. And this last 26 games, if they can keep the record above 500, this will be a much better season than they had a year ago. So we see the team getting better. The team's better. What about the players? Let's take a look at the players and their individual stats on this versus last in their season, see if they're getting better. And it has to start, and it does start with the Utah Hockey Club with the captain. So you got to go to Clayton Keller, and you have to look at where Clayton Keller is and where he fits in from this year to last year. Is Clayton Keller building? Is he getting better, or is he plateaued? When you look at the games last year, this year he's played one fewer game. He was hurt for a game this season. So through 56 team games, he's only played 55. And goals are similar. He's got 20 goals this season. He had 22 goals a year ago. So goals are very similar. But it's the assists that are significantly higher. This year in Utah, Clayton Keller has 40 assists. Last year in Arizona, he had 30. That's 10 more assists in 55 games. That's significant. So he's got 60 points versus 52. But the other thing I wanted to point out with Clayton Keller, we've talked about how much better this team is defending. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like the plus minus stat. And you talk about if a player's on the ice, should he be a tick against him for being on the ice during a goal if it wasn't really his fault? Well, unfortunately, it's a stat, and it exists, and it's part of what the NHL keeps. Last year, Clayton Keller was a minus 21 through 56 games. Minus 21. That's a big number. You're minus 21. This year, he's a minus 7. And it's significant improvement in his goals against allowed while he's on the ice. And one of the things to keep in mind with Clayton Keller, all of his power play points don't count in plus minus. And he is a very significant player on the power play for this Utah Hockey Club. When you talk about their ability to get points, he's got 24 points on the power play. So when you talk about he's got 60 points, 24 of them are on the power play, and they don't go into your plus minus because that's only at when you're at 5-on-5. So you talk about his plus minus being that much better. I think that's significant. I think that shows his ability to defend. And I think that shows his maturation of becoming a 200-foot player and being better able to play on the ice at any time in any situation. And I think that's going to continue to grow for him. And I think it's going to continue to grow as you find that center iceman that really fits for him. And I think they started to find it with Cooley. Unfortunately, he got hurt. And so those lines had to mix up a little bit. So I think he's going to continue to get better. And he's better when he's competing and they're competing for something. So as they continue to get higher in the standings, look for Clayton Keller to continue to take bites out of that plus minus and be a 200-foot player. He's still the guy this team leans on when they need to get points. The other guy that they'll need to lean on is Nick Schmaltz. And Nick Schmaltz last year, he missed a few games again with injury. So he played 3 fewer games through 56. But he had 3 more goals. He had 14 goals last season compared to 11 this season with Utah. But his assists, just like Keller, he's got 30 assists versus 18 a year ago in Arizona. That's significant. His points have gone from 41 to 32. We talked about his slow start at the beginning of the season with goals. Well, he's almost to where he was a season ago in goals through 56 points. So he's been able to catch up after starting so slow. But the one thing I thought was interesting was his even strength points. He's got 25 even strength points versus last season. And last season, he only had 17. So you look at Nick Schmaltz. Slow start. He's been able to pitch in offensively since then, but he's a guy that distributes the puck, and he needs Clayton Keller to put those away because he looks for Keller all the time. His ability to find seams, get pucks over sticks, that's how Nick Schmaltz gets his points, and that's why he has so many assists, is because his ability to find Clayton Keller in the offensive zone. Nick Schmaltz is a guy they're going to have be one of the guys that leads this team offensively. And he has to get the big goals. You saw it in the shootout goal right before the break, how important it is to have that skill on your team. Next, let's talk about some of these young players. Let's talk about Logan Cooley. Logan Cooley's hurt, and that's been a big hole in this lineup through the middle of the ice. Through 56 games, he played all 56 a year ago. This year, he's only played 50 of those 56 because of this injury. But he's got almost twice as many goals this year. He has 15 goals versus 8 a season ago, and he's got 28 assists versus 19 assists for a total of 43 points with Utah this season, 27 points with Arizona a year ago. And the biggest stat is how much more ice time he's getting. He's averaging 17 minutes, 47 seconds of ice time this year versus 15 minutes and 45 seconds of ice time last year. And why is that important? I think it's going to be important when you get down lower in the lineup, when we start looking at some of the guys that are not getting their offensive numbers that they had a season ago. One of the reasons why It's because players like Logan Cooley have taken that step forward. Hey, let's face it, Logan Cooley's a stud. Offensively, this kid's going to put up numbers. He drives to the net. He plays with a little bit of jam in his game. He can play both ends of the ice. He back checks. He can get under sticks. He's going to be a very, very, very good player. And you're going to see him continue to develop. He has not seen the best of his career yet. He is going to continue to get better. Curious to see how he comes back after this injury, after missing this much time, and how he's able to translate that into getting back. Does he have to start over? Where his leg's going to be? Is he going to get back on the offensive tear that he was on prior to the injury? Well, that's going to be interesting to watch, because Logan Cooley has to be one of the best young players in the game. And I know sometimes in Utah, players get overlooked. But I don't think Logan Cooley is one of those guys. And the next guy is definitely not one of those guys. And that guy's Dylan Guenther. Dylan Guenther a year ago had only played 19 games up to this point because he was in the minors. And he was called up halfway through the season. Maybe he'll stay for a game or two. But he showed the coach's staff that they couldn't send him back down. He had 6 goals at this point of season ago. 6. This year, he's got 20 already. He's got 20, and he's only played 44 games. 20 and 44 games. But again, injuries have been a problem for these young players and the back end for the Utah Hockey Club all season long. Assists, he has 21 this season versus 5 last year, for a total of 41 points in 44 games versus 11 last season. And they have to go to his power play. His power play points, he's got 18 power play points. Last year, he had 4 power play points. So when you talk about Dylan Guenther, his ability to make the big goals at the big time, we saw his back-to-back overtime winning goals, but you're seeing his ability to score on the power play. And what's interesting about Dylan Guenther, you've heard it often, and if you're a hockey person, you know it's his shot. His shot is absolutely elite, and I don't know what it is, because he's slight. And I think goaltenders are deceived by that. They're not ready for that puck to come that hot off his stick. He does a lot of shooting lessons over the summer. He's got a shooting coach. He works on his shot continuously, and it is absolutely elite. He can beat a goalie clean, and we've seen it this season in Utah. And on the power play, when he gets that seam pass and he can get that off quick, whether a one-timer or that quick one-touch wrist shot that he is incredibly hard to stop for a goaltender. And I think this is one player that I keep saying is going to be a leader for this team for years to come. Cooley and Guenther are going to be absolutely elite players. Now, we talked about how young Clayton Keller is. He's still young. So that's why the optimism is there, is that these guys continue to grow. And one of the areas we said was a deficient area was their ability to generate offense. Well, if Cooley and Guenther continue to grow and Keller can maintain the pace he has had over the last 3 or 4 seasons, the Utah Hockey Club is going to finally find the offense that they've been looking for. So let's continue to look at this team. This time, some guys that aren't producing as much. And one of those guys is Lawson Crouse. And you got to go to last year. They 55 games each through 56. He missed a game this season, a game last season. Last year through 55. He had 20 goals. This year has 8. He had 31 points a year ago versus 12 right now. But one significant number I want you to look at is his time on ice. He was playing almost 17 minutes a game last year, and now it's down to almost 14 minutes a game. So you take away 3 minutes of Lawson Crouse's ice time. That's going to make a difference in his offensive production. It is. It's just going to make a difference. Now, is that the only reason? Absolutely not. Like, you look at the start Lawson Crouse had, he hasn't been able to get around the net. He's missing the net on his shots. He just hasn't been as effective offensively as he was a year ago. There is no doubt, if you ask him personally, he'll tell you the same thing, that it's been a difficult challenge this year to generate offense. But that line with Macelli and Bukestad and Crouse that they put together early in the year, and then they broke it up and they put it together and they broke it up again where they are now, it's affected him. There's no doubt this affected him. But there's a lot of life changes, and I know people don't want to hear about life changes. They don't want to hear about it. They're professional athletes. That shouldn't matter. He just had his first child. Makes a difference. But I'm telling you, sleep patterns are different. It's different. And again, not making excuses for Lawson Crouse. That's not an excuse. There's all kinds of people that have children and babies and things going on at home and things going off away from the arena. But it's reality. And I think it's only a matter of time. Lawson Crouse got the skill set. He's a big body guy. He stands up for his teammate. He's still a leader in that locker room. Still extremely well liked. He is going to find it. It's just a matter of when. because this team needs that secondary offense that he provides, because we said the deficiencies are at their ability to generate offense, and they need that secondary scoring. And one of the other guys they need to generate that scoring is Matias Maccelli. Matias Maccelli last season had 37 points through 56 games. Right now he's got 18. He's got half the points he had a year ago. And this kid is an elite passer, an elite puck mover. And we just haven't seen those passes that we saw a year ago that you go, oh my gosh, that's absolutely elite. Where he's able to put it through sticks, between legs, no look backhand passes. We haven't seen as much of that this season as we did a season ago. Part of that was the line mates change up. Part of that is his ice time again. You're looking last year, he was playing over 16, almost 16 and a half minutes. This year, it's down to almost 14. That's 2.5 minutes per game for Matias Maccelli that he's not seeing the ice. I'm talking about that's power play time. And you know how you can get your cookies and get your points on the power play. So that is part of the reason you're going to see some of the numbers decreasing from Matias Maccelli. But he does look like he's a different player this year. There are times he looks slower. There are times he doesn't move the puck like he did a season ago. And I don't know if it's teams are aware of Matias Maccelli now, that he's not surprising anybody. He's not sneaking up from him. Hey, who's this kid? That people know who he is and his ability to move the puck. Or it's just another one of those, hey, things are different. And he's having a hard time trying to find it. He's a kid that only knew what was going on in Arizona. That was his NHL experience. And it's different. And sometimes it takes some time. And right now for Matias Maccelli, he's another guy that secondary scoring is going to be so important. He's got to find his secondary scoring because this team needs it. And one of the areas they're getting their secondary scoring is from the back end. Now, I can't compare Sergachev this year to last year because he played on Tampa. That's not a fair comparison. It's not the same team. You can't compare what he did a year ago. So what I did is I took the top defenseman in scoring from this season through 56 games through the top scoring defenseman through 56 games a year ago. Surprisingly, that was Sean Durzi. Actually, not surprising because he's got the ability to score and generate offense, and that's why he's an outstanding defenseman for this Utah club. And that's why they need him back so desperately. But when you look at the numbers between Sergachev and Durzi, goals are similar. Sergachev's got 10. Durzi had 8. And assists are 26, 22. So overall points, they're 36 and 30. And power play points for Sergachev this year, he has 15. Power play points for Durzi, he's got 12. So what does that show? Well, Sergachev's leading the way. He's leading the way offensively. He leads the Utah Hockey Club in points by defenseman. He's the guy that's going to be out there when they need a goal. And he's going to be a guy that's on the ice when they need to stop and not allow the opponents from scoring. He is on the ice in all situations, and he is proving that he has the ability to generate offense. Because if he's putting up Durzi numbers, that's exactly what we want from him. The unfortunate part for Utah is, again, we talked about their injuries and their ability to generate offense from their defense was expected to be one of their strengths this year. But unfortunately, with the injury to Durzi, and you saw Marino off to a slow start because he was injured, that number is not where they want it to be. But if you can ever get everybody healthy and you can get Durzi and Sergachev both in the lineup, you're talking about 1-2 power play punch, that's going to be outstanding for this team to be able to generate offense from their defense. Because one guy that is helping from the back end, that's Mikhael Sergachev. You look at a year ago, he had 12 points through this point a season ago. This year he's got 22. And you look at his ice time, he's gotten from just over 14 minutes, right around the 14-minute mark, to almost 19 minutes a game. That's nearly a 5-minute increase for Mikhael Sergachev. Mikhael Sergachev has been so impressive to me on how far and how quickly he's been able to grow in this game. You saw him, he picked off waivers, and you go, oh, I'm not so sure that this is the guy that he can do, that he's ready for this NHL speed and pace. And he started off in the minors, and you're going, gosh, I'm not sure if Kesselring is the guy, but he is. And he has been incredibly talented offensively, and his ability to move the puck and get up in the zone, not just on rushes, but his ability to get inside off of the blue line and dive down. So that, and I apologize to him. I said he's picked off waivers. He was not. He was in that trade with Cam Denny and Nick Bukestad when he went to the Edmonton Oilers, and they picked up Kesselring in that deal. So I apologize for that. But Kesselring's ability to play not just on the defensive side of the puck, but his ability to play on the offensive side of the puck. Kesselring's been great. He's got a good stick. He's going to be a guy that's going to continue to grow with this team, and he's going to be a part of this top six for a very long time. So I think he's been an important part of what this team has been able to do, not only in providing offense, but keeping the puck out of the net. So we talk about keeping the puck out of the net. We got to talk about the goalies. So let's get to the goaltending. And this is just a strange tale of role reversals, because you can look at Karel Vejmelka's numbers this season are very similar to Connor Ingram's numbers last season, and vice versa. Ingram's numbers from this year are very similar to Vejmelka's last year. So you look at the games played this year, they're almost reversed. Vejmelka's played 34 this year. Ingram played 35 last year. Goals against average, Vejmelka was this year is a 2.57 goals against average. That's very good. Last year, Ingram, 2.76. Very comparable. But this year, Ingram's at just over 3.23. It's funny how quickly these two have changed roles. Save percentage, Vejmelka this year is over 900. He's at 910. And you go, Ingram last year was 0.91. So they're both very, very good. One this year, one last year. Wins last year, Ingram had 17. Karel Vejmelka has 13 this season, and we talked about the run support. A lot of his wins, that's not fair. You're talking about the run support that just has not been there for Karel Vejmelka. So the win's not a fair stat when you're talking about Karel Vejmelka. And they get to the shutouts. Connor Ingram a year ago had 5 shutouts, and I said a year ago he should have been included in the All-Star game. I thought he played All-Star numbers. I thought he was good enough to have the opportunity to play in the All-Star game, but he didn't. This year he has none. And Vejmelka is 1-1. Vejmelka seems to get all those shots, not those games where he's able to get the shutout and throw the goose egg. But he's got one last year, one this year. But his numbers this year are clearly putting him in the right direction. And one of the things that brings up is, what are they going to do with their goaltending long term? And I think that's a question for Bill Armstrong, not just as the trade line approaches, but over the summer. Because I know a year ago I was thinking, gosh, they might trade Vejmelka and see if they can get him off their books. I think he would be a good backup somewhere and a team that's trying to run for the playoffs. He's got an NHL experience. But now he's starting goalie again. And if you take his wins out of the lineup and his numbers out of the lineup, what does that do to this Utah Hockey Club? A year ago, I wasn't sure he could be the future of this team. Now you have to look at his numbers and go, gosh, maybe he can. Maybe he's a guy that if he continues to grow and he can be that consistent goaltender that they want him to be in Utah, then maybe he can be the goalie of the future. And you look at Ingram a year ago, those lights out numbers, you said he's the goalie of the future. And then you look at now, those numbers are just come down a little bit. And so it's a big question for this group. Do they keep these two? You've seen Jackson Stauber put up numbers, has one loss in the National Hockey League over his entire career. You've got 3 draft picks that are coming up over the next several years. It's going to be interesting to see what this team does over the summer and at the trade deadline, if there's any interest in any of their goaltenders. Because we've seen Connor Ingram play lights out. We've seen it in the National Hockey League. He's been exceptional. And once he finds his game and finds that consistency, he can be a very effective goalie in the National Hockey League. And this could be a dangerous 1-2 tandem if they can both find their stride at the exact same time. Because the other thing this league needs, you got to have 2 goalies. Because you can't get tired, you're going to get hurt, or you're going to get burnt out. And we've seen it across this league, how important it is to have 2 goalies as the season progresses. So we've done everything. We've got the scoring. We've talked about the defense, and we've looked at the goaltenders. One more spot we got to look at, and that's the coaching staff. So let's take a look at Andre Tourigny after 56 games and see how he has progressed in his 4th season with this franchise. And then currently, after 56 games, he has 57 points. And you look at the progression of points. His first season in Arizona, the 21-22 season, he had 38 points at this point. 38 points. He was last in the Western Conference, and he was 29 points out of a playoff spot in 21-22. Almost 30 points out of a playoff spot and in last place. When we talk about that progression, the next season gets almost 10 points more. He goes from 16th to 13th at this point in the season. And instead of 29 points out of the playoffs at the 56-game mark, he's cut that in half to 16 points out of the playoffs by the 56-game mark in 22-23. And then you go to 23-24, add more points, 50 points at this time in the season. Standings are the same, but they're only 12 points out of the playoffs. And that was last year in Arizona. Now go to this year. Fast forward 57 points. So you go from his first year in Arizona to now, that's a 20-point increase over 4 seasons. And now they're 10th in the Western standings and only 6 points out of the playoff. So Andre Tourigny has done just what this team has said they wanted to do, and that's take incremental steps and rebuild the right way. And rebuilding takes time. And sometimes managers, owners, coaches, players can get frustrated along the way, and then they make changes. They make changes that they shouldn't make. So everybody has to stick to the plan no matter how hard it is. And Utah hockey fans, I know it's hard because you want to be that winner. You want to be in the playoff spot. You want your team to win every single night. I'll tell you what, so does Bill Armstrong and Andre Tourigny. They want to win every night. They're just not quite there yet. Getting better, getting closer, but they're not there yet. This is going to be another season, unfortunately, that I think this team is going to fall short of the playoffs. I know they're only 6 points out, but that's a big 6 points. And it's hard to make up that kind of ground this late in the season. Now, that being said, they can do it. But you're going to have to look at Calgary and Vancouver, those games against those teams. And Vancouver's up right after the break. It's their second game after the break. And unfortunately, again, you talk about how the schedule falls in for the Utah Hockey Club. When the break is over, they go to LA and play that game in LA on the 22nd. The next day, at home, they play Vancouver. So they're playing them on a back-to-back, traveling again. It's a time zone, traveling from LA back to Utah, losing that time zone, and you're going to face Vancouver, an incredibly important game in the second game back. That's a game that you look on the calendar as a Utah hockey fan, and that is a must-win for this team. If you're thinking playoffs at all, and there's any hope of the playoffs for this Utah Hockey Club, you have to win the games against Vancouver and you have to win the games against Calgary, the two teams you are chasing to get there. Because unfortunately, the gap is too big in the Central Division to see this team catch Colorado, Dallas, or Winnipeg. It's just too big. They're not going to catch those teams in the Central Division. I just don't think it. Minnesota is too far ahead. Dallas is too far ahead. Their only hope of getting to the playoffs is jumping over Calgary and Vancouver. And it's going to be difficult. And so you have to win that game as they come back home to play Vancouver on the 23rd. And then they're home for 3 games. You've got Chicago, Minnesota, and New Jersey. Again, their schedule is not easy. Those are two teams that are deep into the playoffs, and it's going to be a hard challenge. They've got to win those games at home. They've got to be better at home. We talked about their home record. They've got to be better at home. Well, that's a lot of talking by me on inside the coach's room on the Utah Hockey Club. It's not over. And the good news is this team is progressing. So Utah, rest assured, they're going the right way. They're building the right way. And this is a team that's been decimated with injuries all season, whether it's the back end or up front right now. We're looking at Cooley and Guenther just getting back from injuries. Once this team gets healthy, you're going to see a team that's ready to compete and ready to compete for a playoff spot. Unfortunately for this team, it just didn't happen soon enough this season. So hang in there, Utah hockey fans. The future is bright. I appreciate you tuning in and listening to this different version of Inside the Coach's Room this week on the Utah Hockey Club. Stay tuned because this week I'm coming out with another preview show on the Four Nations tournament. We're going to talk some strategies, some lineups, who I like, who I don't like, what I think these teams could be like on the ice, who's got the top 6D, who's got the best goaltending. We'll take a deeper dive inside the Four Nations Coach's Room later in this week. But for today, I am Petey. Thank you so much for joining me inside the coach's room today. And we'll see you at the rink.